The worst part of growing older is watching your parents age and get much older. I remember them being young and vibrant. I remember when my mom turned 30. I remember when my dad turned 40. I was a teenager. And and then, of course, over the last few years, I've seen my dad and mom both age as mom became the caregiver for dad. And dad went through, one too many surgeries and complications, and just, and mom just got wrinkles on her arms and her skin, on her face. And then dad eventually, being so weak and on oxygen, and he passed away a few weeks ago. What a privilege. What a privilege. And I'm grateful I had the time I had with my parents, but it also absolutely freaking sucks. Grief sucks. Living with grief, when you lose someone you love and care for, it's very different. I've experienced grief, when I got divorced decades ago, or when I lost a job, or, when COVID, right? But losing a loved one to death, even though I had so much time, I was so grateful that I had so much time with mom and dad, and mom's still very much alive, thank God, but dad, right? Got enough time to say goodbye, but that doesn't make it easy. I can't imagine what it's like for those of you who've lost your loved ones suddenly and didn't have an opportunity to say goodbye. I had plenty of opportunities. Grief sucks. But grief, it's a blessing, and I'm grateful for it, because it just shows me the capacity and the depth with which I loved and I still love. It's incredible to experience. I understand grief as a therapist from a psychological standpoint. As a spiritual teacher, I understand death and dying from a spiritual standpoint. But that didn't prepare me or make it any easier for me to lose and experience death and grief as a daughter. So take time. As a couple of wise friends, reminded me as I was ready to jump back to work days after I buried my dad, they reminded me that, take the time. Your dad only dies once in your life. So, that's what I'm doing. Taking the time. And I'm lucky where I can take the time, but life has to go on at some point. Grief doesn't have an expiration date. It comes when you least expect it, washes over you. It can be something so simple and so insignificant to somebody else, and yet for you it reminds you of your loved one, whatever that is. Thank you for listening to me.